Conley. Ken Adams is not here. James Biddle. All right, here we are. The WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca for the Trans Am SpeedFest. We're celebrating almost 60 years of the Trans Am series, starting right here up front with Patrick Byrne driving the Bob West car. This car is really cool, brand newly finished as it raced. Bob West was, we believe, the first African American in America to race in GT. He's a jazz musician, a part of the Wrecking Crew. He actually wrote some Jackson 5 songs, and this Midnight Blue with the gold stripes is what he was going after. But I'm going to bring over my friend Chad Renault. Come over here, Chad. Explain this historic Trans Am group. They don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from the people that build these cars.
Yeah, so what we try to do is we try to make them as close as we can to original. So when anybody asks us how do we prepare them, we say, well, we grab the old SCCA general competition rules and we prepare them the way the SCCA wanted to. And so that's what we've tried to do, at least with our cars.
Nice, that's amazing. We had a question in your race yesterday. Where are you sourcing these brake parts? Where are you getting all the parts to keep these cars original?
That's a good question. What we try to do is we try to find the people that made them in the day. So even some of our brake parts we get from a place in Southern California, Porterfield, and they've been doing it in the 60s and 70s. Andy Porterfield was racing these cars in the 60s and 70s.
That's amazing. Chad Renault, thank you so much. So that's Patrick Byrne racing out here. In the Mike Folsom Boss 302 is Craig Conley. Now, if you were watching yesterday, Craig Conley, Patrick, James Biddle, I think they changed positions 10 to 15 times in the race yesterday, and that is what HTA Historic Trans Am is all about. So thank you, Craig Conley, for coming out. Then I've got, we're going to go to James Biddle here in this Hinchcliffe and Ross. You'll notice here these camera mounts were used, so they had to qualify for a Trans Am race with a 16mm camera mounted to here so that they could film some movies, which is unbelievable. Then Richard Goldsmith wasn't here, but this was one of the factory cars here for Dodge, the number 77 slime green car. Here in the 1970 race with the Trans Am series, this very car put Peter Revson into the wall right there, right here at turn 11. This car put Peter Revson into the wall with this fender. Obviously it's been buffed out, but that's amazing. The history here is so cool. And then we got to get a shot. Look at the team. Look at the sharp dressed team in Trans Am. So it's getting loud here. I'm going to send it up to Scott up in the booth. We're about to get going with historic Trans Am.
Thank you, Ben. Glad to be here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca for the historic Trans Am race. Had a great race yesterday. As Patrick Byrne and Craig Conley and James Biddle, as you heard Ben describe, they were all over each other. Again, as you had heard Chad Reynolds describe, these are the original Trans Am cars that raced in the 1966 through 1972 season. Number 15 to Pat Byrne, that is a independent Shelby American Ford Mustang. That's not one of the factory Bud Moore Mustangs, although it has the number 15 and the original yellow color that you associate with them. But again, these are the original cars. They raced from 1966 to 1972. First Trans Am race ever held was at Sebring International Raceway. Jochen Rindt winning in the under 2 liter class, and Bob Tullius winning in a Dodge Dart in the over 2 liter class. These cars, again, original. They or the manufacturer wars. The original slogan of "Win on Sunday, sell on Monday" originated right here. The factory efforts from American Motors with the Javelins and the Chevrolet Camaros, the factory effort there. Of course, you just heard Ben talking about that factory Dodge Challenger, the Examposi number 77. That was the Plymouth Barracuda and Dodge Challenger representation. As these cars rolling off the false grid, seeing history in action here, folks, as these again are the original 1966 through 1972 cars. Of course, Ford had their Boss 302 Mustang as their representation in the manufacturer wars, as the historic Trans Am cars. The 11-turn, 2.2-mile WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca circuit. beautiful weather here in Monterey, California. We'll be up the coast north of here in Sonoma Valley next weekend. These historic Trans Am cars also part of that show at the Mission Food Speed Tour. Hopefully you can be with us. If not, follow along here on SpeedTour.tv/YouTube. These cars out on their pace lap. These cars are muscle cars in the every sense of the word. They take a lot of muscle to prepare, a lot of muscle to drive. As these cars, the drivers work extremely hard in them. They do not have the paddle shifts or the great modern technology that is usually found in cars. These are cars that you have to muscle around this circuit. Gearboxes are manual transmissions. You don't kind of sequential gearbox. They actually have to slam these gear shifts into the particular gears. Again, this historic Trans Am race out on track. And speaking of on track, coming up back in the booth after his on track experience there down on the grid. What a great sight to see down there, Ben. All this historic Trans Am cars lined up and beautifully attired grid coming out onto the track.
Yeah, unbelievable there as we watch Richard Goldsmith, who unfortunately couldn't be here yesterday, but is here racing with us today with a car that has a ton of history right here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. I'm out of breath from walking up here, but let's go through the grid here. Patrick Byrne in first, Craig Conley second place, Ken Adams, who's not able to start. Didn't make it for transmission issues, but will be with us next weekend. Richard Goldsmith, 1970 Dodge Challenger. Steve Eftimu in a 1970 Ford Boss 302. Dennis Singleton in seventh in a Chevrolet Camaro. Andrew Alcatzer from Russo and Steele in a 69 Boss 302. Bill Godwin, Michael Eisenberg, Ryan Chury, Nick DeVitas, Ron Atchley, and Gordon Johnson rounded out. We've got 14 cars taking the start here in historic Trans Am. And if you know historic Trans Am, some of the best racing, some of the closest finishes, and a fan favorite by far in vintage racing.
This is one of my favorite groups. I know it's one of your favorite groups, Ben. Again, these are the cars that I grew up with back in my day. And great racing. Saw my first race of Trans Am at Road Atlanta when the great Peter Gregg was driving and won there. And one of the Ford Mustangs unfortunately couldn't be here because of some engine issues, but hopefully maybe next week. Coming towards the start there, Ben.
Here we go, green flag, green flag. Patrick Byrne looks like he has the advantage here. Craig Conley just to the right of him. James Biddle behind Patrick Byrne, and then Richard Goldsmith. Look at this, 2x2 into Optima Batteries turn 2.
First three rows look like a pace lap, Ben.
Yeah, look at that. Craig Conley over Patrick Byrne there. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Patrick Byrne sliding it out, trying to get it back. Richard Goldsmith and James Biddle just behind him.
Goldsmith not being here yesterday. I think that's the car to watch, Ben. Richard Goldsmith in that Dodge Challenger, extremely talented in that Dodge Challenger, the Sam Posey car. I think he's going to be the wild card here today in that battle between Patrick Byrne and Craig Conley.
Yeah, really, Richard Goldsmith, a really good driver, but I'm really impressed right now with Dennis Singleton in that number 13 Camaro. As we look, Patrick Byrne makes a pass. Mission Foods, turn 5 on Craig Conley.
You gotta love it. These cars sliding around. You see the drivers working as hard as they can inside the cockpit.
That is so cool. As they come up to our Big Machine Vodka, Spike Coolers, Corkscrew. Let's see if Craig Conley has anything for Patrick Byrne here in that beautiful Bob West Shelby. Number 15 of 26 made for either FIA competition or Trans Am competition here in America.
Yeah, Ford won 3 of the championships over the course of this span that is represented here, Ben, with AMC winning 2 and Chevrolet winning 2. Manufacturers' titles were very important back there. Again, the original slogan, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, originated right here in this historic Trans Am class.
And you saw right there, Craig Conley takes it on the inside of Patrick Byrne there through turn 11. It's a drag race down here. That's turn 1 there. They call that turn 1. I'm not sure most drivers consider it a turn because it is flat out in almost every car. Craig Conley on the brakes. Byrne, Goldsmith looking inside of Jay Biddle.
Looks like Conley may have learned something yesterday. That's where Conley lost the race coming out of turn 11 yesterday, both Byrne and Biddle getting by him.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
Goldsmith is hanging right there with those three top cars. Goldsmith and the Challenger, the Ford Mustangs leading that Shelby American development of the Boss 302 engine that went into that car the next year, and was a formidable duo with George Foreman and Parnelli Jones teamed up driving.
There's James J. Biddle, 1968 Ford Mustang Tunnel Port 302, followed there by Richard Goldsmith in that Sam Posey car.
There was supposed to be two factory Challengers that were going to be entered in the series.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, one was
two
for
passes.
Journey. There's two passes.
Two passes at Franklin Road.
Yeah.
It's Richard Goldsmith there, and then Patrick Byrne took the inside. They come up 2 by 2 into the corkscrew. That's not suggested, gentlemen.
Well, actually, you can do a little bit of that. They've put some extra pavement on the outside there, but you're right. It's not suggested, but you can't do that. But with these irreplaceable cars, I'm not sure that was the best suggestion. Goldsmith still leading for third as they go through.
That's Steve Eftemu in that 1970 Boss 302. Coming into turn 10. There's that yellow Cougar of Michael Eisenberg. Craig Conley now has the lead, but Patrick Byrne right behind him. Coming up right behind him, it looks like that SVRA camera on the roof isn't causing too much drag. Hard on the brakes into Optima Batteries turn 2. James Biddle, so we've got Patrick Byrne, followed by Craig Conley, followed by Richard Goldsmith, and then James Biddle. I believe Steve Eftemu is right behind him. And there, 77, that slime green that Sam Posey didn't originally like the color, but then once he drove the car and it was so recognizable, Richard told me that he did grow to love it.
There was supposed to be two factory Dodge Challengers, well, one for, I believe it was Dan Gurney, one for Sam Posey, but Dodge only had the factory support for the one Challenger, and that became Sam Posey's car. Sweet Savage has a car that looks exactly like that, except it's very dark blue, almost black, the 48 that sometimes runs in historic Trans Am as well.
But it's a Plymouth.
It's a Plymouth Barracuda.
And that was
exactly.
a Dan Gurney Plymouth
Yes.
Barracuda.
Yes.
Yep.
But this is my favorite car. I had a Dodge Challenger back in the day, so obviously I'm going to root for the Dodge Challenger in this particular series. But Goldsmith, a good driver, and that Challenger very quick. These cars, when they were on the podium, they were never allowed to tell if there was a mechanical problem that any part on their car failed, because the manufacturers were trying to sell these cars in the showrooms, and the salesmen didn't want to have to explain to their customers what had happened during the race. But most of these cars were factory cars, but a lot of these cars, Ben, were bought actually off the dealer showrooms. In fact, some of these cars were purchased under what was an employee purchase plan at the time. They were taken to various shops around the country. Dick Gilstrand's was one of them. Race prepared and then raced here in the Trans Am or in a sedan club racing for SCCA.
Yeah, then there's the number 70 red Mustang. If we could get a shot of the 70 red Mustang, Andrew Alcatzer is driving Warren Tope's car. Warren Tope had an inside with Ford and was able to go to the factory, body in white basically, and take a car from the Ford factory. So it would have been like a Bud Moore car,
right,
but it was kind of undocumented that they let him in the back door and take the car, which I think is a really cool story.
And when Warren, he had another car that he took to the runoffs that he was going to try to win a sedan with. That car had a mechanical problem, so he actually took this car that is on screen there, had it shipped to him, and won a sedan with that particular car after having competed earlier in the year in Trans Am with it.
Look at this field right here. That Dodge is in a Ford sandwich. It is Ford, Ford, Dodge, Ford, Ford. Some great, man, we haven't had a five-way battle in historic Trans Am in quite a while. This is turning out to be a great race.
Yeah, Conley and Byrne are at the front of that chain. Like you say, Goldsmith is right in the middle there. I believe Conley has learned a little something from yesterday, because Conley was, he looks a lot tidier in his driving than he did yesterday. I know these cars are sliding around a lot, but he still looks a little bit more under control than he was yesterday.
And driving the 13 of Bob Barker. Where is that? Ryan Turi. Yeah, he was with us yesterday.
Right.
He had to start for some reason in the back. I think he finished about 5th or 6th yesterday, but for some reason started in the back, but he's catching up to this lead group.
So we could have a 6-way battle there, Ben.
And I had to ask if it was the Bob Barker, like a come on down. But no, they just think it was just a coincidence that it was just a Bob Barker. That's a beautiful car as well, though. Look at this. We might have a 6. And we don't like when any cars, especially in Trans Am or TA2, go too wide into the Optima batteries turn 2.
Yeah, that's a difficult turn. There's a very heavy braking load in that turn number 1. And usually you want to be on the inside of the Andretti hairpin. That is, you go through there. Again, that turn tightens up a lot, and even more so than it looks like on the track map. Usually outside is not the place to be in that turn.
So that's Ryan Turry there. Can he catch up to this lead group? 1967 Ford Mustang. Ooh, smoking it out in these tires. And Chad Reynal did answer our questions. They do have a source that they can order these parts from, that they can order some of these wheels, some of the expendables that just aren't made anymore because some of the technology just isn't used. You know, they were using asbestos brakes back then sometimes.
Yeah, the technology has certainly advanced forward, but this racing, very close. They came up over that rise, nose to tail, the first 4 or 5 cars there, with it looked like Steele Connolly in the lead, Byrne in second, and Goldsmith in third.
And there is a beautiful car. That is Nick DeVitas there. Nick, 1968 Ford Mustang Trans Am. That red and gold really shows up. That's Dennis Singleton in that Camaro, 70 Camaro behind him, followed by Michael Eisenberg, followed by Andrew Alcatzer in the Warren Tope car.
So one of Ford's two manufacturer battles were with Mercury Cougar in the 1968 season, I believe it was. They won the manufacturer's championship by 2 points. At the Mercury Cougar, they won quite a bit in the season, but they didn't have a chance to take the manufacturer's title. This is great to see these historic Trans Am cars. Of course, we'll see the contemporary Trans Am 2 cars a little bit later on. What a great transition from the history of Trans Am racing here from 1966 through 72, and then up to the present day a little bit later on, Ben.
Yep, that 13 there is a Warren Agar or Warren Agar in that beautiful orange Camaro. And then look at this Cougar, that yellow Cougar. Michael Eisenberg, it's originally 77, and then they had to use duct tape to make it a 79, I believe.
That's one of the independent Cougars. It's not one of the factory Cougars that they had out there. After Mercury pulled his Trans Am sponsorship, I believe it was Bud Moore took the Trans Am Cougars and went to Grand National Racing with Tiny Lund and won the Grand Am Championship. Look at that, right together still, Ben, those top 4 or 5 cars.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So that's Michael Eisenberg there, and that yellow, I believe that's Andrew Alcatzer. Right behind him should be the number 70 Boss 302. That's the one that Warren Tope kind of, I guess, snuck out of the Ford factory there. To making that pass, Andrew Alcatzer coming in the Warren Tope car, taking a real... I love the noise.
Yeah, those sounds are great coming down. We had those 3 or 4 cars that are in that first group pack come through, and it was just a great sound to hear those V8 engines coming through.
There it is, the Warren Tope car, the 1970 Boss 302. Basically, it was supposed to be a Bud Moore car that he was able to sneak out of there. Andrew Alcatzer, the owner of Russo and Steele, you know, kind of has first right of refusal of any cars that comes across his hand, so he probably snatched that up right away. So they come into Mission Foods turn 5.
Mercury Cougar XR7 against the Ford Mustang. Up front, it's the Ford Mustangs against the Dodge Challenger.
Coming through the Big Machine Vodka spike coolers. Long way down through that corkscrew. There's the Warren Agger car, driven by Dennis Singleton. 1970 Chevrolet Camaro.
Yeah, a lot of these races were measured in hours during the day rather than laps. It's actually a 4.5-hour race. A lot of the races during that initial season were 4 hours or 3 hours or what have you. 1968, they had the 12 hours of Sebring and the 24 hours of Daytona as part of the Trans Am series. And you imagine trying to wheel one of these cars around for 12 hours or even 24, Ben. They just had to be absolutely exhausted after getting out of those cars. Look at this side-by-side action.
Michael Eisenberg. Andrew Alcatzer there. Let's see what happens here. And there's Craig Conley. Oh, man, big change to the lead. Craig Conley to James Biddle. Patrick Byrne to Richard Goldsmith. You know, yesterday I think the lead changed probably 13 to 15 times, and it looks like today is just the same.
And it changed several times on the same lap. I believe either the opening lap or second lap, it changed about 4 times depending on what turn you're at. Look at that. Beautiful sights coming down the corkscrew, the Big Machine Vodka spike coolers corkscrew. Those 5 cars all nose to tail, Ben. He's going to be coming across first. Will it be Biddle, Conley, Byrne, or Goldsmith as they come out of turn 11?
So now it's Craig Conley. Looks like James Biddle's got Patrick Byrne here. Richard Goldsmith in the Challenger in the back, but it's Ford right now for the podium.
And again, this is wonderful having these great original cars racing nose to tail like this, racing hard. I mean, these cars are sliding around. Drivers are working hard inside that cockpit, trying to get past each other and having a great time out there as well.
And this battle here between Michael Eisenberg in 8th, Andrew Alcatzer in 9th, and Dennis Singleton in 10th. Here's the lead. Patrick Byrne takes it from James Biddle at Mission Foods turn 5.
Oh, that's a nice inside pass there. He set that up well. Turned in just a little bit early, and I think he caught Biddle maybe a little bit by surprise. The Ford Mustang, the number 15, out in front. Biddle not letting him get away, though. Looks like Biddle may be sizing Byrne up. Looks like he's trying to get to the inside of him. Don't know if he can make it, though. And waiting back there in the wings is the Dodge Challenger Goldsmith.
Look at that. I mean, you could throw a blanket over that top 4 almost this whole race.
Yeah, this is great action here. Beautiful weather and great action on the track. What else could you want, Ben?
Yeah. Oh, Richard Goldsmith making that pass into turn 10. There's the 13 of Singleton, 1970 Camaro. Looks like he's all by himself now. What happened to the people he was racing with?
The Chevrolet Camaro, obviously most associated with Mark Donohue, the number 6 Sunoco Camaro that won the titles with he and Roger Penske. But actually, Mark Donohue did a lot of the testing for a lot of the independent Camaros that came across the Trans Am, and that were actually parts that Penske would loan the Camaro independent teams, because they were all about, again, getting that manufacturer's title for Chevrolet, and whether it was their team or another team, they still wanted it to be a Chevrolet. Great battles all over the track, wherever you are, but that best battle is up at the front between Conley, Biddle, Byrne, and Goldsmith.
Okay, that's Craig Conley up front, Patrick Byrne second coming through Mission Foods turn 5, followed by Richard Goldsmith, James J. Biddle.
They're still nose to tail. This is great racing, Ben.
You know, historic Trans Am is always fantastic. They put on such a great race. that classic wax Dodge Challenger. That's Ronald Atchley there in the 68 Camaro coming into Optima Batteries turn 2.
Almost side by side. They thought better of it right at the last moment. I sure am glad they did, because that didn't look good when they crested the hill there, when they went to the camera shot. But coming down through the corkscrew, Goldsmith trying to still find a way by those two Mustangs in front of him. Byrne and Conley, two Mustangs, and Goldsmith.
And Steve Eftemue is staying right with him.
Yeah.
So maybe he's in the best seat. Maybe he's thinking, I'm going to save my tires, try to stay with him, and then do a little slingshot at the end. Last lap, we've got a white flag out right now, so we're on the last lap as we go through, and Patrick Byrne is in second, Richard Goldsmith third, James J. Biddle fourth, and Steve Eftemue fifth. And there is Ronald Atchley in that 25 AS.
Well, if Eftemue was saving his tires, he better show it now, because they're on the checkered flag lap. And those two Ford Mustangs are a little bit too far ahead if I was Eftemue trying to make that strategy work. But what a great race they put on. What a great performance, man. These beautiful cars out here. Historic Trans Am action at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca.
There we go. Look, what does Craig Conley have? It's Craig Conley, Patrick Byrne, James Biddle, but this time we threw a little Dodge in there just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And Richard Goldsmith, what does he have? His son usually races with us in the Rusty Jowett Camaro. I saw his son earlier, so I know his son and the whole crew that we saw in matching outfits, Chad Raynal and his crew at Impeccable, are going to see what we got here.
Looks like they're kind of doing two separate battles here. We're going to have a battle for the lead, I believe, between Byrne and Conley. Then there's a bit of a gap, and then comes Goldsmith. And then right behind him is Biddle. But yeah, let's see if Conley learned anything. He was in this exact position yesterday and couldn't hold on as he came out of turn 11.
Oh, taking on the outside at turn 10, maybe trying to set up for turn 11. It's going to take the inside, but that's not the fastest line. Let's see what happens.
See if Conley's going to do that over-under thing.
Conley's in the front, Patrick Byrne right behind him, followed by Richard Gold. Oh, James Biddle hangs it loose way out. Look at that finish. Here he comes. Man, I think, according to my transponders, it was Craig Conley just takes it over Patrick Byrne, followed by Richard Goldsmith, James Biddle, who somehow hung on to it, and Steve Eftemue, but it's not over yet. Look at this, Andrew Alcatzer
that battle's
picking
still going
it up
on. Yeah.
Behind Michael Eisenberg. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I believe Conley did learn something from yesterday. That was a great finish. See if Eisenberg will have anything for Alcazar.
Got to see this drag race coming to the finish. Here it comes right here. Michael Eisenberg, Andrew Alcatzer, Mercury versus Ford. I don't think Andrew has it. Oh, maybe. Maybe he's got
close.
some power. That 302 over the 209. Let's see. According to my scoring, it was still Michael Eisenberg.
It had to be by the slimmest of margins. It looked like that the Ford Mustang was pulling up and reeling him in, but not quite enough.
That might have been a what we call a transponder race. Who had the transponder closer up to the front?
Great job by Craig Conley, though, coming back from the third place finish yesterday to take the win today over Patrick Byrne and Richard Goldsmith. Two Fords and a Dodge. Just like the days of yesterday, a factory effort for Ford, first and second, factory effort for Dodge in third.
How cool is that? Just out there waving to the fans, living the dream. If you grew up watching Trans Am and now you get to wear their clothes, drive the very cars that they drive at the very tracks, it'd be like basically getting to go play at Yankee Stadium in Mickey Mantle's costume, using his bat costume. I said costume, I mean uniform. But it's the closest thing you can get to being Sam Posey here at Laguna Seca, is to drive the very car that he drove on the same equipment. How cool is that?
And again, they'll be with us next weekend, Ben, as well. We're looking forward to that, as well as Watkins Glen this year. That'll be a little bit later on in September, but Next weekend, they'll be up the coast in Sonoma. Historic Trans Am will be traveling with us.
Yeah, the Mission Foods Sonoma Speed Tour next weekend. Well, here we are at the Trans Am SpeedFest looking at 60 years of Trans Am history. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because we've got the Trans Am B sedan next after these breaks.